Eurobox presents Where Do They Belong, written by Satarupa Bose Roy. Where Do They Belong is a thoughtful, timely, deeply human book that approaches migration not as an abstract political problem, but as a lived human reality. What gives the book its strength is precisely this double perspective. It engages with policies, with borders, legal systems, and Europe's current political tensions, but it never loses sight on people hidden beneath those headlines. Again and again, Satarupa brings the discussion back to the individual, the refugee, the undocumented migrant, the mother, the student, the displaced person. And it works. So let's welcome the author who's right now connected with us to present her new published book. Hi, Satarupa. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor.
So your book begins from a very personal shift in perspective, from distance and misconception to empathy and understanding. Was there one particular encounter that changed the way you saw refugees forever?
Yeah, that's very true, actually. It was really indeed one of those igniting moments in my life, I would say, if I may put it this way, because there was a play in my daughter's school, and that play was about the refugee children who were in a refugee camp, and they were actually looking for their parents because they had lost their parents in one of those, wars, and they were put in a refugee camp, and they were looking frantically for their parents, hoping that they would be put back into the refugee camp and the family would be reunited. And that particular play was being actually played by a few Ukrainian refugee children. So it was one of those moments when the mother of one of the kids who was actually performing on stage was sitting beside me, and she was crying her heart out, and I was just beside her, also crying, but from a different point of view, because I had my daughter beside me, and I had the pangs, and I felt the pangs of her mother, of that particular mother, who was also looking for probably some peace and wanted to go back to her roots. So at that point in time, I really thought that these people who are displaced, who come to a different world altogether in search of peace, in search of happiness, do they really get happiness? Do they really get peace? And that was a turning point in my life, which I thought that, no, I should really deep delve into this and should really be, should actually know about these people and start working on it. So that's when I actually went back to a few people and I said, I want to do a research. And that's how, it all began.
The book was born. Okay. So I find that one of the strongest ideas in the book is that legal status and real belonging are not the same thing. When you chose the title, Where Do They Belong? What kind of belonging were you most interested in exploring?
That's a really very good question. Honestly, I am a migrant as well. So I moved from a different country to the Netherlands, from India to the Netherlands rather. And I sometimes actually often try and find my roots as well. Though I'm not a refugee, I'm not an asylum seeker. I came as a knowledge migrant. However, I always thought that where do I actually belong? Do I belong to India or do I belong to the Netherlands? But in spite of having the fact that I have a legal passport, I have a legal RP, like a residence card and everything, but where are my roots? Because I'm always trying to find, my roots, something that I've left behind, and trying to have my roots in this country. But it's so difficult to have your own identity grown in a different country. And that is the reason why I thought that these people who do not also have like a green card, blue card, red card, or whatever the color of the passport is, that kind of an identity to prove where they actually belong to. Where do they actually belong? Because if you kind of think of it, those refugee camps are like standing in a vacuum. They're not even in their own country. They're not even in the country where they are hosted, right? So they are actually living in a limbo, in a political limbo. you know. And I think that is the reason why I wanted to give this name, Where Do They Belong? Because do they really belong anywhere? It's just that they're called as numbers,
Does it
you know.
really matter where do they belong? That's the final question, maybe. Also, your book moves between very intimate personal stories and wider European political debate. So there's a wide range. How did you approach finding the balance between this human stories and the bigger policy situation and questions?
Yeah, that's also very interesting because what I did is when I spoke to these people whom I knew as refugees, and as I wouldn't really use the word refugee, I would rather use the word asylum seekers. So when I actually spoke to them, I saw them fighting this political battle. You know, I saw them fighting this legal battle rather, and as well as political, of course, in order to find their roots, in order to find their place in this country. And I think that is where it came from. So whenever I wanted to write this personal anecdote of theirs, I actually went back to the policies and the political and the legal systems, you know, that shaped their lives. So I would say that yes, it's a very big shift from one human story to another political system, but I think it's all very intertwined in their lives, you know. So it's at the end of the day, it just becomes one. So their story, their political personal story is not really different from the legal perspective, you say, or the legal system of the country.
Very clear the structure of the book and also your goal. When it comes to the reader, after finishing the book, what do you most hope that the reader can feel or think?
My only request to all my readers that read this book from a humane perspective. Be a little bit more human. Do not judge these asylum seekers as political refugees, as social nuisance, as, you know, burdens on the society. Just think that any day, depending on this situation that we are at this point in time, any day we could be one of those asylum seekers as well. Any day we would have to probably, you know, shift from one country to the other, because you never know what's going to happen in the future, right? So just be a little bit more human, just be a little bit more empathetic and feel for these people. And I think if we can really love each other, I think this world will be a much better place.
Thank you for this message because it is needed right now. Thank you very much. We wish you best luck with your book.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me once again.
This is an important and heartfelt book, one that combines research, political awareness, lived encounters. It will speak to readers interested in migration, social justice, European politics, and above all, the question of what it means to belong in a world increasingly shaped by exclusion. Where Do They Belong, written by Satarupa Bose Roy, is now available in bookstores and digital platforms. It's a publication by Eurobox.